Welcome back to the Tydirium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about a 6-inch mask figure from CFCB Unlimited. This is the Gloria Baker, and it is a pretty interesting take on the original figure. It is a upscaled version of the original figure, but it is made with a paint job to match the original. There's some major differences in this from the original, but it's still very reminiscent with a great homage to the original. But we're going to talk about this and more, and then we're going to discuss a couple of things about this. What is this? Why would you want to collect this? Who's looking for this kind of stuff? And what would you do with it? How would you display it? All those kinds of things. We're going to talk about all of this and more coming up. Alright, so taking a good look at this figure, first of all, I want to say that there's paint on the eyes, and that's really good, but there's paint all over. This thing is 3D printed, hand painted, and there's a lot to it. And so I'm going to kind of show you what you can and cannot do with it, what you can get away with and not get away with. But the original ones didn't have paint on the eyes, so we're going to do a full-on comparison here in a bit, but showing you the lack of paint on the eyes, and that was something that was kind of a problem for some people. I guess they assumed it was so small kids wouldn't notice or care. It does have 7 points of articulation. You have the head, the shoulders, the hips, and the knees. So with that, we'll get into a little bit of an articulation discussion in just a bit. But the way this is assembled is, I think it's different than how KENNER made theirs. So you can actually remove pretty much all these parts, and that is how it is made. And it is assembled, which I love that idea. I mean, it's great because let's say you break your leg and they want to send you a fix for the leg or something like that. So that works pretty good. You can pop the leg or the arm. Now, I wouldn't say you'd want to do this 10 times a day or anything. It's to be very careful when you do it, but it's nice to know how it's assembled and how it's created. Now, these are 3D printed in probably 2, 4, 6 pieces and then hand painted and assembled. Now, the paint looks really good. Like, I'm actually quite impressed because I paint a lot of stuff. I do a lot of touch-ups on vintage figures, and this is painted by hand. There's a video online showing how he does it, and it's not 100% perfect, but it's way better than anything I've ever painted. So very high level of skill right there, and I believe this is a one-man job, but when I kind of listen to the way he talks, it sounds like there's more people involved. But either way, anyhow you slice it, this looks really good for a hand-painted 3D printed item. So with that, we're going to go into some comparisons and stuff here in just a second. So I'm going to try to get the camera to focus a little bit more on the small one here. And I've done a lot of these comparisons where I compared Legends figures, which are 4 inches tall. This thing's like 2.5 or maybe 3 inches. So as you can see, the hair is very similar. And then you get down to the kind of the chest piece. So what made me think this was a whole different figure was the fact that the way this is painted, it doesn't really bring out all the detail. There's so much detail in this, but it's so simply painted. All the detail on the chain is painted right here. The detail on what's going on with this white piece right here. The detail from the straps are painted on, and that's evident. And let's see if we can get that. It's evident all that detail is on the original figure, but it wasn't painted. So it was just one color, monochrome. And so this figure was not really given the best by KENNER. KENNER did not go out of the way to make this the best figure in the world, but CFC did. So CFCB. Now, this is the back right here, and that looks way better than the original. And that's one of the things when you upscale this thing, getting the minor details and all that kind of stuff really works. And you can even see right here, there's CFCB 2022 is written on the leg, so you can see when it's getting made. So pretty cool overall, and just some stuff I didn't really expect when I ordered this. I didn't expect that it was going to have this much detail to the paint, and I didn't even know the figure itself had this much detail. It's pretty impressive. So getting into the mask, and I'm using this is some clear nail polish or something. They call it something else, but it's basically clear nail polish. And I use that to tighten up joints, so I have it readily available, and it worked perfect for a 6-inch mask holder. So looking at it, it is exactly the same, just upscaled as the original. And the thing about it is that the paint is to match the cartoon more than it's to match the actual toy. Now, one of the things about this is it is hard versus soft. Now, if you collect vintage masks, you're going to know that the masks do harden over time. Now, this one's still soft, and the clear one over here is getting kind of hard. So, anyhow, this is hard, and it has caused one issue. This is not something you want to put the mask on a ton of times. I've started to have a little bit of paint rub. I mean, this is just painted by hand, and it's got some paint rub on there. So I would suggest that either you display it on or off and not take it on and off a lot. I only took it on and off a few times, but you can see the paint's rubbed inside of there. This is an adult collectible. It is meant to be displayed, not to be played, but it can still be sort of posed. So I do want to get into talking about the articulation now. So with the arms, they move just like the regular figure, and the legs move like the regular figure. I have noticed that it does look like an exact literal translation of the original figure, but for whatever reason, I can't seem, I feel like I get here with the legs, and so putting it in the seated position is going to cause a little bit of stress and possibly a break. And so that's something to be careful about. So, I don't think we're going to have vehicles for this scale, but if you wanted to stick her in another vehicle, you might risk breaking it. It is 3D printed with a high quality resin, but again, it is a 3D print, and you have to be careful with these things. Again, I cannot stress how much these are not for play and not going to hold up to even the old KENNER ones, because the KENNER ones are made of a different type of material, a plastic that's pliable. This is more rigid of a 3D print. It's going to work fine on a shelf, on display, and even moved around a bit and posed a bit. But for the most part, it is purely a display piece. Real quick with her helmet on, and it seemed like that one just went on with no rub. Didn't feel like anything rubbed when I tossed it on. So maybe the first time I put it on, okay. Anyway, it looks great. There's something different about what's going on. There's like a piece of film in here that they put, so it just looks more realistic than just paint or just, well, whatever they did, what KENNER did. Now, we kind of put up with a lot of stuff because it's just so small, and KENNER's budget and all that kind of stuff back in the day. So getting these to be a little bit more collector oriented and a lot more detail to them, it's a whole lot more fun, and yeah, it's pretty cool. There's no holes in it. See, there's holes in the other one so that a kid doesn't choke on it. So that's kind of eliminated too. And they also make these in 3.75 inch scale. So once I get one of those, of course, I'll take a look at that and we'll see how that one goes. But I'm pretty sure everything we see on this is going to be translated over pretty much exactly in the 3.75 inch scale. Okay, quickly I'm going to do some comparisons here. And how does this stack up to modern day figures and size, scale, aesthetic, and all that kind of stuff? First thing you're going to notice is that aesthetically it doesn't really match what we've got now with modern. This is Hasbro, and Lady J's not a bad figure, but she's good for what she is. Okay, the retro one's better, and I haven't opened a retro one yet, but she is more modern for articulation, for aesthetics, all this kind of stuff. This is straight up the same thing that we got, except bigger from back in the day, and it does have its charm. Will it look good with all of these? I actually think when I get into discussing where to display it and how I'm going to display mine, then we're going to have that discussion. So it does look different. It does look older. It does look like an old design versus modern designs, but scale wise, it scales right in there with them. And that is part of why this exists, so you can scale it with your other figures. And I don't really think it looks that bad. Of course, once you carefully put the helmet on, there we go, then it sort of looks like it fits in with the 80s Commanders a bit, but still not quite the same aesthetic it's going for. But still, it is one of those things that's kind of cool, it's kind of interesting, it's fun to have, and I think I'm going to be in on this line. I think I'm going to be in on supporting the CFCB and what's going forward with Mask. Okay, so getting into price range and all this kind of stuff, this is below boutique. This is more or less one-man project, making them himself and putting them out in really good quality, considering the fact that this is not a factory created item. This is not injection molded. This is 3D printed. I'm sure some of the 3D prints don't come out well, and so probably 1 out of 5 doesn't come out well or something. I don't know the stats on those. So this is something that takes some time. Everything is more or less made to order for the most part, and then There's a few extras at the end that they leave up on the site. This was $55 plus shipping and all that kind of stuff. I paid $60 for this thing, shipped. Now, one of my problems was getting into this line was that every figure you have to buy, you have to pay the shipping, and it's already more or less expensive. But I think there's really no other option out there, and there may not be an option again for 6-inch ever, anytime soon or ever, or any of that kind of stuff. And so I think it'd be kind of fun to just dial out the main cast. With that, they are going to be putting out all the main cast again. So all the figures that have been made will be made again. You'll be able to get it for people like me that are starting late. So that's good news there too. So these are Super 7 figures. These were 55. Well, I think she was 45. And then she was, well, I paid 70 or 80 bucks for her, something stupid. But I think she was 50 when she came out also. So around the same price point, but these of course are made in a different fashion. And so with that, you're comparing apples to oranges, and I'm still going to support this and be on with this. I think the smaller ones are like 25 or 35, and so the 3.75, and I'm going to get into those too. At least try to dial out the main 12 or so. Okay, so getting into how to display her. What do you do with this figure? You paid your 60 bucks, and what are you going to do with it? Well, ideally, I think the best way to display this figure is on a shelf with a bunch of other figures, with a Matt Tracker and Dusty Hayes and all of them. You know, just the whole group, the cast, probably season 1, series 1 cast to put on there. That would make the most sense. Now the problem is, for me, I don't have access to those just yet, and it takes time for these to get made. So probably over the course of a year, I'll put together a shelf for this. But with that, up until then, there's a couple of other things you can do. Either you can put her together with some other female characters of the 80s, like this is Rambo's cat, Mara Jade from Black Star. This is Amy from the A-Team. And I realize I always just lean her up against the, she's always leaning up against the van. And so she has trouble standing on her own. Terrible figure, but you gotta have her, I guess. And then Tila, of course, Sorceress and that kind of stuff. But this is an example of different toy lines from the 80s that have around a 6-inch size figure, 5.5 to 7-inch figure. But I would say there's another option for displaying this. Either to display with other figures that are from the era, display it with a group of 6-inch mask figures, and then there's one more idea. Okay, so the other option that I would suggest for displaying is to display it next to your mask vehicle. Obviously, I don't allocate this much space per vehicle on my shelf. It's crammed in there with zero tolerance, so fitting her in there somehow, some way, it's possible though. And it's kind of something I started to do with some of the KO stuff that I got. And it's like, hey, they're bigger than the original figures. And so with this, I think it's pretty cool. It's something you can do. Also, the 3.75-inch figures, doing along that line. But I really think they look best on a shelf by themselves as a whole different thing to celebrate Mask. So now that I've shared my thoughts on this figure, I'm curious about yours. And of course, leave your comments down below. I was not paid for this. I was not sent this for free. I did pay for it and sought it out and bought it. I'm kind of excited for it. I'm also excited that Hasbro did not shut down the production of this, and I've always been wanting to get into it. I just figured they'd get further along and put out maybe a multi-pack or something like that. My suggestion to Scott would be to put a multi-pack out. That would be fantastic. Or, you know, at least giving us the option to buy them again is good enough for me, because I understand that it's probably hard to hold on to inventory long enough to build up like 4 of them at once. But anyway, I'm excited for this. I'm pretty much going to be all in on it. And like and subscribe. Peter Mayer out.